Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the next NLP Talks podcast live here at UIP HQ. And thank you very much for those of you that are joining us live and those catching us on the replay. As you know, this is an exclusive. We only live stream the live podcasts here in the NLP Talks podcast community group. So it's the way that you can get the pre-release, as we call it, so that you can access stuff as we record it live. So if Wendy and I slip up, guess what you're going to see? But we won't. We'll be having an awesome time. So we're also live streaming on YouTube as well. So welcome to everybody. Cool. So without further ado, today's guest here on the podcast is the lovely, awesome Wendy Derrick. Good morning, Wendy. How are you?
Morning, Laura. Well, I'm good, thanks. What a glorious morning.
Oh, it's stunning here in Wales this morning, isn't it? Looking out the window, not a cloud in the sky. Amazing. And you've got such a beautiful view where you live. So I can imagine how great that was this morning.
Absolutely beautiful. Up on the mountain early, get the air into the lungs. Beautiful. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's brilliant to have you here. Wendy, I'm going to kind of jump straight on in, if that's okay. Just actually, before we do, for those watching live with us today, do you just want to do a little intro, tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I'm Wendy Derrick. I'm the director of Leading Confidently, which is a provider of leadership and management training and coaching. I live halfway up a mountain in South Wales, surrounded by sheep, cows, and goats now, interestingly enough. And I love dogs, and I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to help women with their self-confidence to show up and do their thing.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I cannot wait to hear you talk more about all of that stuff today. So thank you. So Wendy, let's start. And I'm going to take you back a few years now. What got you interested in NLP? Like, how did NLP come across your path?
So I've always been fascinated by how the mind works and how some people can show up, their confident selves and others can't. And, I wasn't a very confident person throughout my schooling. The teacher would, whenever they used to ask me a question, I go bright red. And often I wouldn't sort of speak up or answer a question, even if I knew the answer, purely because I had this, this lack of self-confidence. So growing up, it's always fascinated me, the difference between people and how some people can really, come over as very confident and calm and focused, and others can't. So I did a load of research into it and met you in Llanelli many years ago and thought, wow, you were a force hitting me at 8 o'clock. I'd been on the road since about 5:30 that morning. And I thought, goodness gracious, who the hell is she? I haven't had a cup of coffee yet, and she's in my face. So I've got to learn more about her. So it was a taster session, I think, with the CMI around NLP. And we did the Circle of Excellence. And I thought, yeah, I need to find out more. So that's kind of what my first sort of taste of NLP was.
So you had me early morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, doing my thing in front of however many people. I remember that event in Llanelli, and because it was at the air ambulance base, wasn't it, if I remember rightly? And,
that's right.
It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, sorry about that.
I remember coming from then. I was sort of doing some work with Chwarae Teg, the gender equality charity at the time, and they've got offices just around the corner. So I went from the ambulance service down to Chwarae Teg, and I went into a class full of women who were on a confidence program, a career development program. And I thought, wow, this is absolutely something that could make a difference to these women. And, we ended up threading a lot of the techniques into those programs. And that's kind of where #Own Your Own Mind was born, really, for me.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love it. I love it. Now we're going to talk about your Own Your Own Mind workshops later, because they're just amazing, and you've helped so many women with them. Now, in terms of obviously your journey, so obviously you are in the NLP world, you're a master practitioner, a master coach, you've done all our courses here at Unleash Your Potential. What do you think, reflecting back on all the training that you've done, what do you think for you are some of those standout moments where, maybe you're on a course or even after a course thinking, do you know what, this makes a difference for me? We'll come on to everybody else in a minute, but for you personally, are there any thoughts you've got on that?
I think in terms of what has impacted me the most has absolutely been the breakthrough. That transformational breakthrough that we do on the master's program is something that I'd never experienced that, and it just shifted so many blocks for me. Certainly blocks around money, which I know a lot of entrepreneurs have. And as I told you at the time, I left that master's transformational breakthrough and went straight out and sold 2 breakthrough programs, my high-end products straight away. So for me, it just kind of cemented everything, because I like to see the evidence things. I am a bit AD. I want to know what the research says and what the experience is and the evidence, what that all points to. But you can't ever replace having experienced for yourself. And then, then I got the buy-in, because I could see the difference that it made for certainly Chris and Neil, the 2 people that I've done the breakthrough with.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and I'm not surprised to hear you say that. It was certainly one of my standout moments when I did my training. It's probably some of the best personal development I think I've ever had. And obviously people expect me to say that because they're my courses, but I genuinely believe, people, as you say, people come out of those courses going, wow, life's different. And yeah, it's phenomenal. Now, Wendy, there's so much I want to ask you, and I'm really worried I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to keep asking questions and see what we can get, because I know the listeners are going to be fascinated to hear some of your stories. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about your work with women in policing, if that's okay. Obviously, you've worked in policing for many years before you set up Leading Confidently. And I know that you even now spend quite a lot of time in the sector helping women in policing. And I'm just wondering whether you could help the listeners understand on the podcast a little bit about how NLP has helped you enhance the work you're already doing and the difference you think it's made for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of my passion, really, where having spent, 31 years in a male-dominated environment and experienced a lot of the unconscious gender bias that exists and still exists today, that's what drives me in terms of working with women in male-dominated sectors to be able to have the confidence to step forward, to call out stuff and crap when it's not good enough, and to be able to, seek out the careers that they want. So a lot of the work has been around managing their mindset, around confidence, but also helping them in times of pressure. So, for example, one lady I worked with, she was involved in a really serious case and had to spend a lot of hours in the witness box in Crown Court being cross-examined. And, for a lot of police officers, that's a big deal, being sort of challenged in terms of your decision making and some of the methodologies you've applied in your investigation. So she was very, very keen to be able to, in that moment, under pressure, being challenged, to be able to get a sense of calmness, but also that clarity of thought so that she could focus on absolutely what needed to be told to the jury, without sort of the noise and the pressures that come from some of the challenges that they face. So what she did was anchoring. We did a lot of work around her mindset, and some techniques she could use in the here and now was to anchor, as you know. And she WhatsApped me at the end of one particularly long day, and I hope I don't offend anyone with my language, and she said, oh my God, this shit actually works. Because what she'd done is she'd applied an anchor, very similar to how we do on the course. You know, when you feel that intense emotion at the height of that intensity of that emotion, you apply a physical stimulus and the two become neurologically linked. So we'd worked really hard on finding memories where she absolutely felt calm, focused, and was really clear in terms of her thought process. So that for me was really pleasing, because this isn't just about the individual. This is about the individual giving the best performance they can in order to get the right result for victims of crime in this particular instance. So yeah, that was a really interesting one around anchoring.
So amazing to think, I mean, I can't even imagine how challenging that must be when you know you've done the right thing, but yet you're being cross-examined and someone's trying to pick fault in what you've done and find a little thing you've forgotten or didn't get quite right. And that must be so challenging. But to think that really helped her in that moment, that, like you say, that's a good day in the job, right? When you get messages like that.
Absolutely. And another one springs to mind where, again, a lady who was in, quite a serious part of policing, major crime, she was going for promotion. And as is the case, I think, with lots of women who are at a certain point in their career, sometimes feel overlooked. And, this frustrates the hell out of them. So we did a lot of work around learning from her past experiences of going for promotion to a very senior rank, and worked again on that clarity of thought, mindset, calmness and confidence when you walk into an interview and sit in front of a promotion board. And on this particular occasion, she didn't get the promotion, but what she did get was feedback to say she was 100% different in terms of her focus, in terms of improvement of how she answered clearly, concisely, and calmly. So anyway, she put all that into practice. We continued working together, and job in the bag. She got the promotion she needed. So that was, again, a great result.
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. So, some of our listeners, obviously, as you know, we've had 10,000 downloads now on the podcast, and we're in 92 countries around the world. So, a lot of people that listen to this podcast will not have done NLP training. They may be listening to this podcast because they want to learn a bit about what we do and how we help people. So, in that example, could I get you to share, because obviously policing is very structured, isn't it, in terms of how you go about getting a promotion and things like that, but promotions is going to apply to kind of everybody in their career. Could you give everybody a little bit of an insight? What kinds of NLP tools did you use with her to give her that clarity of thought and help her sort out her mindset? Because anchoring you've already talked about, which is brilliant, but I'm wondering what else did you do to help her?
One of the things I do for all my clients before they ever sit in front of me is to bring to their conscious awareness that negative self-talk that goes on. So, as you and I both call it, your shit list, that's a really important task that people undertake before coming to see me, purely because, as we know, our thoughts influence how we feel emotionally, and how we feel physically, and then how we behave. So unpicking and peeling back the layers of that inner dialogue that we have with ourselves, that inner critic. I call mine my whinging git that sits on my shoulder, and I have to give it a good old talking to sometimes.
That's brilliant. I love it.
But just writing those thoughts down, verbatim, exactly as they say those thoughts to themselves, is really useful for me, because I'm able to analyze the linguistics and really get a feel for some of those modal operators, the language and the pressure that puts people under. So yeah, once I've done a lot of that pre-work, for me, it's very much around looking at maybe those core values and core beliefs that they have. Because as we know, those core values and core beliefs, amongst other things, are those filters of the unconscious mind. Now, as I'm sure maybe listeners perhaps don't know, but that we've got the unconscious and the conscious mind. And the unconscious mind, that big, powerful beast that drives 95% of your behavior, is the one that makes the difference. And that's where the focus of the NLP coaching is. And for me, that's where the difference is made in terms of those long-lasting behavioral changes that people want to see. So for me, yeah, it's about unpicking what sits in the unconscious mind, so we can then adjust those representations people are making, how they're making sense of stuff in their mind, so that then we can tweak that so that it serves them better. So their thought process, their thought strategies are disrupted when they don't serve them well. And then we just sort of put a thought strategy in its place that serves them much better, empowers them for the future.
How eloquently put. That is just probably one of the best explanations I've heard. So yeah, thank you for sharing it like that, because I know that's how you'd have talked to a client, and so many people listening to the podcast, as I say, don't know NLP. They're here because they want to learn a bit about NLP. So it's brilliant to hear you describe it like that. It's just it's brilliant. So sticking with women in policing, because I know not only are you one of the most amazing coaches, but you also run workshops and trainings. And I know that some of your work that you still do in policing is where you go in and run workshops for police forces in order to, again, to help women predominantly. Could you perhaps share with everybody a few tips or a few ideas around the workshops that you've run and the difference NLP has made there?
Absolutely. So with the workshops, we set the scene, if you like, with that basic understanding of the power of NLP and how that influences our thoughts and behavior. But one of the key things we do at the beginning is to just take a moment to reflect on the past 12 months in terms of our disappointments maybe and our successes, and then look at the lessons learned from both those disappointments and successes. And from that, we normally establish the limiting beliefs that a lot of people have, particularly around the lessons learned. And then we form some guiding principles from them, principles that they can live their life going forward in the coming 12 months that will mean they have less of those disappointments and more of those successes. So initially, it's all about self-reflection. We also do some work around values. And obviously, our values are the things that are most important to us. It's what we focus on, influences our decision-making and the choices we make, whether that's in relationships, career choice, it's everything. So we do a little exercise around values, which is hugely powerful. And I mean, probably the police service are not going to thank me for this, but certainly in last year's Own Your Own Minds pre-COVID that were face-to-face, 2 women left the organisation as a result, because all of a sudden they realised that their core values weren't in line with the values that the organisation needed them to operate. And by that, I mean working away from home for long hours when actually maybe your core value is family and it didn't fit. So yeah.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah, and I think, circle of excellence, anchoring, they're key techniques that I always use in the workshops. And some of those workshops I've run for women, vulnerable women in the community, you know, survivors of domestic violence, women who perhaps need the courage to make some, you know, really difficult decisions in their life. And they've all been able to learn the techniques and realize actually you have a choice. You have a choice as to how you show up. You have a choice as to how you allow these things in life to impact on you. And yes, you know, we're all going through it at the moment. Some people finding it more difficult than others, some being affected more than others. But I think if we can hold on to the positivity that NLP can bring you, particularly with some of those presuppositions, you know, everybody's doing the best they can with the resources they've got available to them, and just let it go. These are all things that can help us to just perhaps stay on track and stay stable and focused to give us the energy we're going to need to bounce back from all of this.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'd like to ask you a little bit more about limiting beliefs. Obviously, we at a limiting belief, as we define it in NLP, as any belief that someone holds that disempowers them or holds them back in any way. You know, I know you work with a lot of women in leadership, not just in policing, but in lots and lots of different organizations. And I'm just wondering, from your experience, you know, limiting beliefs that people hold, you know, really, I think, hold people back. And I think when you're in the junior ranks of an organization, you kind of look up, don't you? And you think, well, they've all got their stuff together, you know, they're doing a grand job, and, you know, aren't they amazing? And then as you progress up through an organization like you and I both did, you start to realize that actually those people that look like they got their stuff together at the top of the organization often haven't. And you know, as women, as we both are, having grown up in organizations, got into senior leadership positions, and now you working with people in senior leadership positions. I don't want to necessarily disregard the men, but I'm just interested, because I know you do a lot of work with women. I'm just interested on what you think the role of limiting beliefs are for women in senior leadership, and how that plays out for them.
Absolutely. And, you know, whilst I have spoken a lot about women, I am at the moment coaching a leadership cohort of 13 people in up in Scotland, and they're a mixture of male and female. And imposter syndrome, limiting beliefs actually are across the board. Indeed, the latest research around imposter syndrome tells us that under pressure, men actually experience imposter syndrome more intensely than women, which is an interesting study. Yeah. But the beliefs are the same, you know, it's all around judgment, you know, it's all around perception, and whether putting yourself out there, you know, you naturally, the higher up you go, the more you're going to attract that judgment. And I think that basis we all operate from. It's just some of us have got the techniques and the ability to manage it more than others. And it's really interesting. I'm actually coaching a line manager and their line manager. And obviously, confidentiality comes into play here, and I don't discuss either with each of them. However, it's so interesting to hear how those limiting beliefs play out for the person in the senior role and the person in middle management. They're identical. And it's interesting that some of the work that we've done together has, the feedback I've had is, oh my God, thank you so much for the work you've done, because the difference in my line manager is like night and day. It really is different.
That's amazing, isn't it? Because I think, like, for me, when you're riddled with limiting beliefs, as I know I was before I found NLP, I think, you know, your strategies for coping as a senior leader are quite limited. as in you've got the whole fake it till you make it kind of attitude, which is what most people do. Most leaders, I think, in my experience, be interested on your take, but I think a lot of leaders think they're better than they are at hiding what's really going on in their mind. We all learn to put a mask on. We all learn to, not necessarily turn up and be vulnerable at work, because we learn habitually that doesn't get us what we need. And so you learn to operate with a mask on. But yet these limiting beliefs are inside of you. And, as you eloquently described earlier, those limiting beliefs and those values and those filters directly impact your behavior in a moment. Like I think people think they're better at controlling their behavior and modifying their behavior than they really are. Because as you've just said, when people are under absolute pressure, we just act. Like, you don't go, oh, I'm really, really stressed, and like, right, so what's the right way to react? You just react. And so, our behavior, I think it is often as leaders, it is the undoing, I think, of some leaders when they think they've got their stuff together, but actually in the moment they react. And we all do. I mean, even I do. We all react. But I think it's interesting, isn't it, when you think, in that example you've just given, someone, you've been working with the line manager on their limiting beliefs, and the employee of that line manager is telling you, oh my goodness, I'm sure it's probably along the lines of, I don't know what you've done, but whatever it is, thank you, because you've just made my life better. Have you got any more thoughts around that? Because I think it's a really interesting topic.
And fake it till you make it was something I used to work hard at, but now, since I've discovered NLP, actually I've realized how exhausting that is. So the change has to be real. The change has to be, genuine. So for me in leadership, that's all about, like you just say, showing vulnerability in leadership is a key leadership strength. Showing up as your authentic self really does help to change the mindset, the commitment, and the engagement of the people around you. So I think what I try to do with the leadership clients I've got is for them to, accept themselves for what they are. And from that, their confidence grows, their confidence expands to the point where they are an absolute role model for the people around them. Because, they say, I haven't got all the answers. And we work together collaboratively to get all the answers. So for me, it's all about showing vulnerability in leadership and being authentic. From there, you don't have to waste the energy on fake it till you make it, because that's just exhausting, and it'll find you out in the end.
Yeah. And isn't it brilliant that when you help, and obviously I don't do as much coaching now as I used to do, but isn't it brilliant when you get a leader to that light bulb moment of realizing who they really are and what's really going on for them, and then empowering them to know that the things they want to change, they can. So those limits, you don't need to fear judgment. You don't need to be concerned you're not good enough. You don't need to feel like you're not worth it. You don't need to feel like you don't deserve to be in that role. Because actually, that's what, for me, NLP really does. It gives us a toolkit to go, right, now we've peeled back the layers of the skin and we know really who you are and what you stand for and what's holding you back as a leader. Out of that, what do you want to be different, and how can I help you? And I think, I don't know about you, I mean, I want to kind of almost drift into your more executive coaching role, which we've kind of invertedly been talking about. But for me, that was a massive, massive shift in executive coaching, because again, I'll be interested in your take on this, but I used to get really frustrated as an executive coach, because don't get me wrong, great questions have a role. They absolutely do. But I used to get so frustrated coaching people, because you're kind of like, something needs to change here. Like, we can't sit here for month after month still talking about the same thing. It's almost like that, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So something has to change. And NLP, to me, in my executive coaching, was just like the most exciting toolbox I've ever been given. So anyway, could you help people? Because I know that you're such an experienced executive coach and you've been doing executive coaching for so many years. And could you give everybody a flavor of just what it was like for you when you discovered NLP and went, I can use this in executive coaching and I know it's going to be super special?
Well, I do remember having this conversation with you after the prac course, saying, well, Laura, do I really have to do your coaching course? I mean, I'm a qualified leadership coach, ILM level 7, for goodness sake, and I thought, you must have thought, who the hell does she think she is? But I did the course on your recommendation, and I'm so glad that I did, because I go back to, the power of the unconscious mind. For example, what foot did you put in your shoe when you got up this morning?
Oh, blimey. Do you know what? I don't even know. I just put my shoes on.
Exactly. Some people say definitely my left. Some people say my right. Some people say I haven't got a clue. I don't know. And that's the point, is that it's the unconscious mind doing that work for you. It's that habitual behavior. It's how you react without even thinking, whether it's putting the car into gear or whatever. That is the difference that the NLP coaching makes over leadership. The leadership coaching in its, sort of separate sense is all about the conscious work. If somebody doesn't do the work around developing that, the power of the unconscious mind to change their mindset, any change made, as far as I'm concerned, when you just deal with the conscious thought, is only ever going to give you limited, short-lived change. If you want to make long-lasting behavioral change so that you have the best year ever, year on year on year going forward, then it has to be a mixture of unconscious and conscious thinking. And that's where the NLP work comes in. So I've seen a significant difference. I mean, I combine the two, don't get me wrong, leadership and NLP, and it works really, really well. It's very, very effective for my clients.
So for you, what did you notice as that real difference? Because I describe NLP a little bit like the secret sauce, the cherry on the top, the little sprinkles which I can put into executive coaching. As I say, I don't do as much of it these days. Obviously, that's one of your prime roles in your company is executive coaching. I know. To me, it just transformed the results in terms of the speed at which I could help people change, the speed at which, they could get what they wanted, to be able to get that promotion, to get that job, to start that business. And speed for me was something that I was like, wow, this stuff is fast. And also the other thing which I noticed, and again, I'd be interested on what your clients have said about it, was the way that NLP is content free, as in I don't have to spend hour after hour with you talking about why I didn't get the job and all of that stuff. Actually, you only need to know so much. And then you can go, right, let's just roll our sleeves up. Let's get rid of this limiting belief. Let's get rid of this internal conflict in your mind. And, I'll never forget one of the first executive coaching. I was coaching a technical director and his eyes lit up. And I said to him, we can get rid of that limiting belief if I'm not good enough. And it'll take me about 25 minutes if you're up for it. And he was like, can you do that? And I was like, yeah. And it was just a weight off his shoulder. I mean, what are your thoughts around that?
I would say that I recently had a client who was a high achiever, and if you go onto my website, it's the most recent testimonial. And we did a number of Zoom sessions, obviously with the restrictions, but then we had a day together doing timeline therapy. And he's written a lovely piece on my website, and it's all about, he was a bit of a skeptic to start with. Again, wanted to see the evidence, and I totally get that, because that's what I'm like myself. But he really didn't want to go into that level of detail, the content that you refer to, because, there were things that weren't working for him, and he didn't want to talk about it. So when I explained to him what timeline therapy was all about, and all I needed to understand was the emotion and the learning that he was going to get from getting rid of that emotion going forward, then we were off and running. And I think he says in the testimonial something along the lines of, I just wish I had done this sooner, because like me, I wish I had learned all these techniques 30 odd years ago, so that I wouldn't have had 30 years of pain for somebody who was fighting, low self-confidence in quite a disciplined hierarchical environment for so many years. And people say to me, can't believe you used to feel like that. That's not how you came across. But what they don't see is, you disappearing into the toilet, just thinking like, get your head together, get your game face on, come on, one more push and you'll have done it. It's exhausting. So for me, it was all about making those changes at that unconscious level. Content free is perfect. Yeah, who wants to keep going over stuff that actually, in some of my clients' cases, has traumatized them? Why would I want to be putting somebody through that when this is all about making the change and moving forward?
I love it. I love it. I love it. So in terms of, if you could, because we've been talking about executive coaching now for a while, but if you could kind of, in summary, in a like a little snapshot, summarize for me how NLP has enhanced your executive coaching, what would be that standout thing for you?
I think it's got to be the self-belief and self-confidence, without a shadow of a doubt, and how that has made a change. So, particularly with COVID, I would say 90% of the people on my client books at the moment have got anxiety. So fast phobia over Zoom has been massively effective for people who are suffering from anxiety at the moment. And that's something that, for the coaches out there, all of a sudden your reach is global. And there are so many techniques that you can use on Zoom.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love, as you know, I mean, we've spent so much time together, and I love hearing your stories of how you've helped people, and the way in which you have transformed not only people's lives but their career prospects, their business prospects. And I don't know about you, but to me, that NLP toolkit I get such a big grin on my face when I see people literally transforming in front of me, and all of a sudden the world is possible and it's exciting, and I can do this. And is there a standout moment for you, in any of the coaching? Because I know, again, we've been talking executive coaching here. I know you do some personal coaching as well and things like that. But in terms of you, when you kind of did the whole, yes, I've nailed that, and really, really made a difference. Like for you, I'm sure there's hundreds to pick from, which is going to be an awful question to ask you. But I'm wondering, is there like a standout for you that you were like, yes, that's it, I've nailed it?
Yeah, there was. There was a lady that had been made redundant and left quite, a very senior position. I won't say anything more because she's quite easily identifiable. Anyway, senior position in public life, and just completely lost her identity, and with that, her confidence. And when I first met her, she had not taken much time with her appearance. She was very, very emotional. We met in a public place, but she's very, very emotional. Found it very difficult to really pull together all of the information I wanted her to explain to me. She was that emotional. That's, how down she'd got. And, she signed up for the transformational breakthrough. And I was so blown away by this woman that walked towards me when we met after the post session after the transformational breakthrough. I just couldn't believe that she was the same woman walking towards me. She had this sparkle in her eye, she was just strutting her stuff, walking towards me. I did a Facebook Live straight outside the venue because I was just so blown away by the difference in this person who, was unemployed and had completely lost her motivation, her confidence, and literally, I'm not kidding you, within weeks, she was back out there turning down jobs. That was the best bit. Having so many job offers, she was turning them down, waiting for the one that was just quite right. Which just before she was, just panicking that she'd never get a job and was considering taking anything. So yeah, she's well on the way to an amazing career, and yeah, her whole family were amazed at the difference in her. That was really, really. Oh, I was amazed when she was walking towards me. I just thought, this is not the same person.
Amazing. And I'm welling up, and I'm just listening to you talk about it. I'm just like, Laura, pull yourself together. But it's such a special moment, isn't it, when you see that and think that you've had a hand in that. You've guided that person through a process. You've helped them make the decisions and change the things that they needed to change, and to go from what you've described to turning down jobs because it's not right for that's just magical. That is just magical. Absolutely love it. Now I've still got so many things, Wendy, I want to ask you. I know that now this is again a little bit left field. So as we know, you do a lot of work in leadership and management and executive coaching and things like that. But you also have your fingers in a lot of other pies, which is brilliant. And I know that you are in the middle of a new initiative, a new program where you're looking at working with potentially prisons. Now, this is quite different. And I remember when you mentioned it to me, and I was like, wow, okay, that's different. And I'd just love to learn a little bit more about the role of NLP and NLP coaching, and what that, I know you probably can't say too much because obviously it's a little bit under wraps because you're in the middle of putting it all together. But I'm just curious as to how you've seen an opportunity to be able to help in that space.
So this is in collaboration with a local university, and has kind of just holding a moment because of COVID. But there was I don't know if you're aware, but violence in prisons certainly over the last 18 months has been escalating significantly, and Cardiff prison in particular is actually bucking the trend, and they're not seeing the levels of violence that you see in other prisons. But one area that was causing concern at a recent inspection was around the level of homelessness when prisoners leave prison. So on release, 40% of prisoners find themselves homeless.
Wow.
Now, whatever your value judgment is about offenders and about prisoners, the way that I looked at that was there was a distinct correlation between prison, homelessness, and reoffending. So if 47% of prisoners find themselves homeless on release, there's a potential for 47% reoffending. There's a potential for 47% more victims. And that's where my focus was. How can we intervene, give some kind of positive intervention at a different stage to prevent the number of victims as a result of prisoners reoffending? So this coaching intervention was purely put in to break that cycle. So I went into Cardiff prison along with another load of coaches, and I was amazed, by the educational and development opportunities there are for prisoners, to prepare them for their release so that they do return to society well equipped psychologically and academically, to be able to make a contribution to society again. So yeah, the intention there is all around mindset, confidence, positive thinking, so that, as I'm sure your mind is racing now about the NLP techniques that could be used. But yes, if we know that we can manage our mindset, then for people who perhaps through various different circumstances will find themselves in certain situations where actually the ability to respond calmly and considerately rather than react maybe in a way that they reacted habitually for many years is key. So yeah, I'm really excited about that particular project. But not much going on at the moment because of COVID, but anything I can do to break the cycle between homelessness and reoffending, and then seeing a reduction in victims of crime, is absolutely something that I'm going to pursue.
I just think it's brilliant. I know a friend of mine over in Northern Ireland also got involved in a project with youth reoffending, and and went into not called prisons, are they, when they youth, but what's the name? I can't think of the name of them now. But anyway,
youth offending centre, something like that.
Yeah, something like that, isn't it? Anyway, sorry, forgive me, folks. I should have thought that through. But it's that cycle. And like you say differently. And all right, prisons are a very different context, executive coaching. But when you listen to how you describe helping leaders in organizations to think differently, to break the pattern, change the behavior, it's the same stuff, right? In a different context with, all right, a different outcome, because you're trying to make a difference to stop victims of crime and help reduce reoffending. But it all comes back to the mind, doesn't it? All comes back to the mind and how you manage it.
Every single time. And in terms of victims, one of my passions, one of my whys is very much around supporting survivors of domestic violence and giving them the power of the mind to be able to walk away, have the courage to either ask for help or to walk away when they can.
Yeah, which is a whole other thing I know you also do with Women's Aid, and and all that. But it's kind of like same different, isn't it? It's all about it's all about what's up here in your mind and how you manage that. And yeah, you've just so brilliantly described it across all of those completely different sectors and people, but it all boils down to the same thing. It's amazing. Cool. Now I want to talk about, and there's so much more, Wendy, so much more. But I want to talk specifically about your amazing workshops that you run. Now I know you've talked about them several times, but you have designed and put together bespoke, only available from the awesome Wendy Derrick, a specific program called Own Your Own Mind Workshop, which I think absolutely brings together everything we've been talking about today. And I know loads of people have been through your workshops and programs, from police forces to Joe Public off the street to the stuff you've been doing with Women's Aid. There's so many people that you have helped, and I just, firstly I want to do a big whoop and big up for that I can't even say it, get your teeth in, law, Own Your Own Mind Workshop. But I know that NLP has had a really positive impact on that workshop, because you already ran it before you learned NLP, didn't you? And then you kind of added some extra bits in. So could you tell everybody about the Own Your Own Mind Workshop and what it's all about?
Absolutely. So it is purely about getting you out of your head and out of your way. So the NLP bits of it are very much around, identifying that negative self-talk, disrupting those thought strategies that don't serve you well, and implementing strategies that serve you better going forward in terms of how you think. We do a lot around building then a career program on the back of it. So women, whether they're going for promotion or where they want to change careers, they do a huge reflection, almost like a stock take, of things like their values, how satisfied they are with different aspects of their life. They also look at the networks of support that they've got around them. Once they've got a bit of a clearer idea of the path they want to take, we devise a network that will allow those women to bring people into that network, so that those individuals are almost cheerleaders for them, if you like, in terms of the path that they want to take in their career. I mean, as I said earlier, 2 people walked away from their organization after 20 years, I might add, realizing that the program empowered them to be able to make that decision for a life that suited them better. So yeah, it is very much around reflection, networks, looking around what can you do to be more visible in the workplace? What are those 7 signs that women are more visible in the workplace? We go into the tactics of how you can actually engineer certain things, not in a manipulative way, but in a very structured, strategic way to get you from where you currently are to where you want to be. And for some women, where they want to be is actually off the scale and is something that they've just said, you know what, that is something I'm not going to be able to achieve. The moment you start peeling it back, finding out what those blockers are, what's holding those individuals back, making the tweaks, and then planning out that strategic direction of travel is going to take them to where they need to get to. It's beautiful to see. And each of the groups have got their own WhatsApp groups. They're always in contact with one another. So that support, that peer support is there, for as long as they need it.
And the success rate you've had with people on that workshop is just, I'm in awe. You've got something I think quite special, and I know we have a lot of HR professionals and corporate people that listen to this. If you're looking for an empowerment program to help women in your organizations, you need to go and speak to Wendy Derrick, in my view, because I think that's quite a special workshop you've got there. And I think, I've seen women go through that program and come out the other side. And I know you then go on to coach some of those women, and, and they get to one-to-one support and things as well. And yeah, I just think it's amazing, Wendy, honestly, what you've done with this NLP toolkit and how you've weaved it into what you already do. That's one of the reasons I was desperate to get you on this podcast, because you've done so much. And you don't always, like me, you don't always call it NLP, but oh my goodness, is there little sprinklings all over the place of what we can do. And yeah, it's phenomenal. So I'm conscious of time, and I know you're super busy. Is there anything that we've not covered today that you would love to say, or any kind of final remarks that you would like to give on the back of what we've talked about today?
Just one thing that I saw on Facebook yesterday, and I thought it was really apt. And I'm sure many people, you've probably seen it yourself, but somebody wrote, 20 things that women who hit 30 should stop wearing. 1 to 20, other people's judgments and other people's expectations. So for me, this is about realizing you are your own person. Don't live the same year 75 times and call it a life. You only have one. Just get out there and enjoy it.
I love it. I love it. Wendy Derrick, you are awesome.
Very much. I enjoyed that.
It's amazing. Now, Wendy, we always finish our podcast on a few quick fire questions. I forgot to warn you about this. So folks, she got no idea what I'm about to ask her. So give her a second as she ponders over these questions. Right, Wendy, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, right. What's your favourite word?
Love.
Oh, brilliant. So if you could be any age you want, what age would you want to be?
The age I am now, 54.
Because
I now know, I wish I'd known 30 years ago what I know today. The way I feel today with what I know today is the way I want to feel. So 54 for me. However, that's why I love, getting involved with coaching people is to give them my lessons learned and to avoid, help them to avoid wasting their 30 years.
I love it. What does unleash your potential mean to you?
Just getting rid of those straps that are holding you back.
And if you could describe our training courses in one word, what would you say?
One word.
One word.
Transformational.
Thank you. She did it. One word. She did it. Wendy, if people are listening to this podcast and they're interested to find out more about you, maybe want to get in contact with you, and maybe interested in working with you, what's the best way for people to get hold of you?
So they can go onto my website, leadingconfidently.biz. I'm on LinkedIn, Wendy Derrick, and Twitter, Instagram as Wendy Confidence. I had to think then.
Brilliant. But everything about you've talked about today, like the testimonial you've talked about, how to get in contact, if they go to your website, leadingconfidently.biz, they'll be able to find all your contact details, I'm guessing, and be able to email you or get in contact.
Absolutely. From the website, you'll be able to email and WhatsApp me.
Awesome. Wendy, thank you so much. You've shared so many pearls of wisdom, which I know are going to be hugely valuable to the whole community, but particularly to those people looking at NLP from a coaching point of view and a transformation point of view. I think, you've so eloquently and brilliantly described how you've used it. And I can't thank you enough for that. It's wonderful to spend time with you anyway, but it's brilliant to have you on the show. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. Really enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Now, just before I shoot off, I just want to make a couple of points to our awesome community. One, NLP Talks podcast community on Facebook. If you're not in it, why not? Come and join us. So this podcast that you're listening to now on all the podcast platforms was actually streamed live probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago in the podcast community. So make sure that you go and do that. Just go into Facebook and look for NLP Talks podcast community and come and join us. That is where we do loads of stuff around the podcast. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about our online courses, so not a lot of people know that we've got online courses, so you can do some introductory NLP courses online. If you go to our main website, which is unleashyourpotential.org.uk, you'll find details of all the live courses. But if you go across the top menu, you'll see online courses. Click on that and you'll find all the online courses. You can study with us from anywhere in the world, as long as you've got Wi-Fi. So please do make sure that you go and check that out. So there we go. Wendy, thank you. Thank you all listeners for joining me for yet another awesome podcast. I will be back in 2 weeks' time with my next amazing guest. And until then, take care, stay well, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.